Thank you, everyone, for the chance to come and talk to you today about Island Pharmaceuticals. My name is David Foster. I'm the CEO and the managing director of the company, and I look forward to telling you what we're doing in infectious diseases. Island Pharmaceuticals, as I mentioned, is an antiviral drug development company. We have a lead molecule called ISLA 101. This is actually a well-known compound. We're repurposing ISLA 101 from its original life to a role as an antiviral molecule. We are targeting dengue is the lead indication that we're pursuing. Dengue, I suspect many of you here appreciate that dengue is a significant problem. There are about 400 million dengue infections a year, and about 100 million of those require some form of intervention, and there's no intervention. There's really nothing you can do, as many of you may know. There's no antiviral that targets the dengue virus. The vaccines are limited, if not problematic, so we think there's a huge commercial opportunity for a small molecule that you would take, it's a pill, like ISLA 101 that we're developing. I mentioned that ISLA 101 was developed previously. It was initially developed for cancer. We are now looking to use ISLA 101 as an antiviral molecule. We have robust preclinical data, and in fact, we're currently in a phase 2 clinical trial that I'm interested to tell you about. I think you'll be excited about where we're going. In addition to ISLA 101, we're always looking for other molecules. We've identified another molecule that we're very interested in to expand our pipeline, and I'll tell you a little bit about that as well. On the corporate side of things, we've had a pretty good year, as you can see from this slide. We have a market cap of around between $35 and $40 million. We completed a placement last November that was very, very pivotal and coincided with one of the uplifts that you see here. The shareholders that you see on the lower left-hand side of the screen all participated in this placement, and these are physicians, ASX CEOs, pharma veterans. These are very sophisticated pharma investors, and they like our story. You can see our board of directors. We've had a bit of a reconfiguration of our board of directors, and I'm happy to be working with Chris Tumanopoulos. Chris is here with us today, and he and I will be around in booth 35. If anybody has any questions, we would love to tell you more. So ISLA 101, what's the story there? So ISLA 101 was initially developed by J&J. It was developed as an anti-cancer therapy. It's been in thousands of people. It's been in 40+ clinical trials, yet it never has been approved for anything. Not for safety problems, but because it hasn't been an effective cancer therapeutic. We were looking for small molecules that had activity against dengue virus and other mosquito-borne viruses, and we came across a paper from Monash University where they had screened libraries of thousands of compounds to look for anti-dengue molecules. They found a molecule that turned out to be ISLA 101. They went on to demonstrate that it had activity against all 4 serotypes of dengue, as well as West Nile, Zika, and yellow fever. So that was fantastic. Importantly, 3 weeks later, Harvard published nearly identical results. And so when the biochemist in me loves to see world-class labs asking the same question, doing similar experiments, and arriving at the same answer. That's really important and makes me think that we're looking at something that's very real. Based on the preclinical safety data from all of the early J&J work, and based on the data that we have here with the preclinical work showing that ISLA 101 was effective in varying different models of dengue infections, we wanted to move forward with it. I also mentioned at the outset that we're looking for another molecule to expand our pipeline. We've identified a molecule called galidesivir. Galidesivir is a broad-acting antiviral molecule. It has activity against 20 different viruses. Importantly, galidesivir was being developed by a company in the US called BioCryst, and BioCryst obtained between $70 and $80 million from the US government to develop this product, and it was being developed as a bioterror countermeasure. Galidesivir has excellent activity against viruses like Ebola and like Marburg. These are viruses that we know have been weaponized. So this is really a bioterror stockpile play, if you will. We have executed a binding letter of intent for an option to acquire this molecule. We're in the middle of due diligence right now. We like it a lot, and I suspect you'll hear more about this from us in the future. But I think the thing to note about Island is you think, what do these molecules have in common? And what they have in common, by the time we touch them, they've already been in clinical trials. Our goal is to solely focus on being a clinical company. We only want molecules that have been through phase 1 clinical trials, like ISLA 101 and like galidesivir. Both have completed phase 1 safety studies. What that means is we don't have to do the whole drug development path. Typically, it takes between 10 and 15 years to develop a drug. It takes about $2 billion US to develop a drug. We don't want to do that. We're starting at phase 2 clinical trials or other studies where we can see signs of efficacy. For those of you who invest in biotech companies, phase 2 data, when you see efficacy, does your drug work in your indication? That's when you start to see massive value inflection points. And so, as a reminder, we're in a phase 2 study right now with ISLA 101. Why are we pursuing dengue? I think this is a really important slide. Again, you all get this, right? You understand dengue. If you look at the graph on the left, last year was the worst year on record for dengue infections. More dengue infections than ever before. The map on the right I like to include, this shows dengue outbreaks around the globe. And what is nice is this is showing just over the last 3 months. So I update this slide nearly every time I give this presentation. You can see it's no surprise Southeast Asia as a hotspot. We know this, right? But look at Latin America, South and Central America. It's absolutely on fire. Again, 400 million dengue infections a year, nothing you can do about it. It's a huge, huge problem. If you look in the United States, it's interesting to see. I think it's interesting that Los Angeles and San Diego counties, these are not tropical counties. It's very arid in Southern California. They're also having locally acquired dengue outbreaks, as is Northern Australia. So there's a huge problem, and it's only going to get worse. This is where dengue is predicted to be endemic just by the year 2050. This is only 25 years from now. Now look at Australia. The northern half of the country is going to be endemic. If you look at the southeastern third of the United States, also going to be endemic for dengue. So we look at this and think, there's a train coming down the track. There's absolutely nothing that can be done about today. We think we have a very good molecule that could potentially prevent, might treat a dengue infection, and we're in the midst of a phase 2 clinical trial right now to see if it works. I'm excited to tell you the update on this clinical trial. We're running what's called a challenge study. By challenge study, I mean that we enroll healthy individuals. We infect them with an attenuated or a weakened strain of the dengue virus. This is a study we're doing in collaboration with the U.S. Department of Defense. The Department of Defense created this virus. It was going to be a vaccine, quite frankly, but it made people a little bit sick. So rather than throw it away, we're using it to study the infection. And the Army's been running these challenge studies with this virus for a while. They're actually giving us all of the data out of their earlier studies. But what we do, we enroll healthy individuals, and then we expose them to this attenuated strain of the virus. And what that enables you to do, because you control when people get infected, you can pre-treat them with drug and then infect them and see if you can prevent the infection. Alternatively, you can infect first, wait till the symptoms start, and then you can start dosing them to see if it's a treatment. We're doing both in our clinical trial. And the way our structure worked, we started with the protocol on the upper right, where it's a prevention study. We pre-treated individuals with ISLA 101. Then we infected them, and we asked, can we prevent these infections or reduce the virus level, reduce the symptoms associated with that? And importantly, the FDA wanted us to look and see if it worked before they would allow us to move to the second cohort. And I'm really happy to tell you that when my safety review committee looked at the data, they said, yes, we absolutely see evidence of antiviral activity in the individuals on ISLA 101. Therefore, you can move forward to the next cohort. It was actually a watershed day for the company to see that our molecule ISLA 101 has antiviral activity. We're very excited about this. We're in the midst of closing out the second cohort. This is the treatment cohort. We're expecting data, unblinded data out of the study really in the next 6 to 8 weeks. So stay tuned. It's going to be an exciting time. Where do we go from here? When we finish this study, if we see evidence of activity in the therapeutic cohort, the next study that we'll do, and we're making plans for this right now, will be in a country that has endemic dengue. So we'll be in Southeast Asia, running a treatment study, probably around 100 to 150 individuals. We're right now working with CROs and clinical sites to put the budget together for that. If the therapeutic cohort does not show activity, then we'll do that same study I just described. However, we're going to be doing a prevention study, right? We're going to be doing the study where we treat first and see if we can prevent the infection. And again, we're working on the budgets and the sites for that as we speak right now. So by the time we make the announcement on the clinical trial, we'll be telling you this is what's coming next. And this again should be in the next 6 to 8 weeks. So what's going to happen over the next 6 months or so? I think in the terms of milestones, what you're going to see is updates on my phase 2 study, where we're going with galidesivir, the molecule that we want to acquire. You're going to see data coming out of my phase 2 study. We're going to be telling you what the next study looks like, what it's going to cost, and how we're going to accomplish all of that. The next 6 months are going to be an incredibly fun ride, so I hope that you'll stay with us. Come along the ride with us. I'll be here with Chris Tumanopoulos, and we would love to visit with you about this. So thank you very much. I'll stop right there.